Salve, brothers and sisters, and welcome back to another episode of Press C to Start, looking at video games from a Catholic layman's perspective. This may be kind of random, but I just wanted to start out by saying I love action games. I was looking at my game library the other day and I was like, whoa, this guy likes to keep his throttle to the max. I've got games in my collection to keep me on my feet and on the edge of my seat. I've got games to test my mettle on every screen and every level. I've got RPGs, JRPGs, shmups, beat-em-ups, fighting games, platforming games, real-time strategy, first-person shooter, third-person shooter, X-Men, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons & Dragons, Super Smash Brothers! I've got games to keep my testosterone fueled up, topped off, and ready to take on every baddie in the universe. That's a but sometimes I like to play a game that has a little more laid-back play style. Something where I can relax. Maybe start a farm, grow some crops, raise some livestock. Then when maybe I'm tired of work, I can go relax and maybe go fishing or take a walk through the forest. Maybe a game where I can meet that special someone and settle down and start a family. Yes, anyway, the game I've been alluding to, of course, is this little farm life simulator with this amazingly charming art style. And it's surprisingly engaging for such a heavily task-oriented game. But is this countryside paradise all it's purported to be? Well, let's break ground and get into my review of Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley, developed by Concernedape and published by Chucklefish, is an open-ended RPG farming simulator, where the player takes on the role of a character who has inherited their grandfather's farm, and they work to bring it back to life and working order. Probably the most interesting piece of information about the game is that the whole thing was literally developed by one person. Stardew's creator Eric Baroni dreaded living his life stuck in a cubicle, so he took a chance to go it alone and do what he loved. After 4 years of hard work, Stardew Valley was released in 2016 and was an instant hit. It has since then grown quite a large following and is still being worked on and updated even today. What makes Stardew Valley so beloved? How can a game about farming really be that entertaining or engaging? What made this indie game stand out then and even now? I would argue it all comes down to the love that was crafted into every pixel and line of code. So starting out the game, you first create your character. Are you a boy or girl? What kind of clothes do you wear? Do you like cats or dogs? What's your name and what's the name of your farm? I'm the kind of person who always likes to make my character look like me. Yeah, close enough. Once you're satisfied with your customizations, you start the game, and you're immediately greeted with your character's grandfather on his deathbed. As your grandfather speaks to you for the last time, he gives you a note, telling you not to open it until the time is right. Cut to sometime later as you find your character stuck in a dead-end cubicle job, with a pretty good emphasis on the dead part. Your character finally opens up the letter they received all those years ago, and inside not only do you find that your grandfather has left you his old farm as your inheritance, but he's also left you an escape to a free world. Quickly, your character is on their way from this lifeless place to start their new life as a farmer in Pelican Town, nestled down in Stardew Valley. Man, I could talk for days about this opening sequence. The cinematics and the tonal shift in music, and each scene is so perfect. I love how it goes from the somber music box melody with images of childhood innocence and loss to this dead corporate world devoid of music and filled with the drone of stagnant office noise. Then the office sounds morph into the subtle sound of birds chirping as your character takes the bus to their new life, emphasizing freedom and maybe even a play on death and a journey into paradise. You can really see Baroni's heart and soul here poured out into the narrative. After settling into your new place, your character wakes up the next morning to start their new life and to turn this neglected, unkempt land into something beautiful and, most importantly, profitable. As you could probably guess, your objectives for the game are pretty straightforward. Make things, sell things, make money to buy new stuff, to increase the production of things, to make more money, and so on. It's capitalism and free trade at its simplest. The best part about the game is that there's so much for you to do. There's the farming, of course, growing crops and raising livestock, but there's also fishing, scavenging, chopping down trees, collecting artifacts for the museum, buying and collecting furniture and other accoutrements to decorate your property, making friends with the locals, cooking all these different recipes, and there's even a little bit of adventuring as you spelunk through the mines to collect ore and fight monsters. Most games will slowly introduce you to all the gameplay mechanics over time, sometimes even throughout the whole length of a game. For Stardew Valley, from practically day 2, you can do almost all the things that you can do in the game. Your only limit is your character's time and energy. This is not to say that the gameplay is too simple. It's simple enough to learn, but with enough variety to keep things interesting and satisfying for a while. It is a slow burn to watch things grow and improve over time, but after a year in the game, it's beautiful to see how far you've come. There are 4 individual 28-day-long seasons in the game, and each change the world slightly as time passes. The most significant are the crops that you can grow, the items you can scavenge, and the aesthetic scenery. But there are little things as well that change, like the ice cream stand that is only open in the summertime. Every season has at least 2 special events you can participate in. You have your alternate dimension holidays like the Egg Festival, Spirit's Eve, and the Feast of the Winter Star, along with several other festivals and things in between. Besides having this big event you can participate in for a prize, it's cool to see the whole community of NPCs together and interacting. Speaking of NPCs, each resident of Pelican Town has a very unique personality, each with their own dislikes and likes, and even having their own routines for every single day throughout the year. All of them are very colorful and relatable, albeit stereotypical at first glance. The more you get to know them though, the more their personalities really come out. The way you make friends with people is mostly by giving them gifts. There are other ways to build your relationships with them, like talking to them every day or fulfilling their requests on the community board, but giving gifts is the primary way you become their friend. As your friendship grows with each of them, you'll be rewarded with a heart event, an intimate cutscene of their life that your character gets to be a part of. These are especially intimate for the 12 available bachelors and bachelorettes, whom you can date and eventually marry. For essentially an outsider, these scenes, even more than being present at the festivals, are what really brings your character to be a part of the community. The backstories for all these characters are very heartfelt, each one of them having a very touching brokenness to them, really making them feel authentic and believably human. And when I say brokenness, I mean like real life struggles. I mean real relatable struggles ranging from overcoming fears to coping with absent parents to even depression and thoughts of suicide. Thankfully, all the hard events end up on a very positive note, and your character always being the inspiration for the solution to each of the NPC's problems. Though it's somewhat dark and corny for some of the characters, it is an uplifting and even at times romantic end to each of their story arcs. So in short, Stardew Valley's positives are its relaxing atmosphere and gameplay, its gorgeous pixel art design, the simple yet involved progression system that sharpens your time management skills, the abundance of things to do and collect, and the delightful townsfolk that color and bring to life the game world. So what are my negatives then? Well, beyond the hard events, there really isn't anything else you can do with the townsfolk. I really would have liked a way to hang out with someone, maybe just have some kind of mini game you can play together with them. A good example of this is already built into the game with one of Abigail's hard events, where you go over to hang out at her house and play a minigame called The Journey of the Prairie King.
Wait, a game within a game?
Yeah, a game within a game where you just fight hordes of enemies, reminiscent of the Robotron 2084 and Smash TV arcade games from the 90s. But this one has a Wild West theme. Anyway, you can only play this game together with Abigail once. It would be nice to be able to just hang out and have other activities with the other townsfolk as well. For example, maybe have some kind of rhythm game with Sam's band, or maybe helping Moru out with some of her experiments. It would be cool to even hire people to help you out on a farm or tag along with you in the mines. I especially wish there was more you could do with your spouse after you got married.
Hey now, that's not what I meant.
After getting married, there's so little effort involved in keeping up your relationship with your spouse that it feels sort of shallow. The minimum you have to do is to give them a gift maybe once or twice a week to keep them happy, and that's pretty much all you have to do. I got to a point in the game where I would just have a stack of coffee in my inventory, and I would give my character's wife one every morning as my daily gift to her. After that, I would barely see her at all each day. I mean, what about going out on little dates with your spouse every now and then? Maybe having them ask you to run errands, or at the end of the day have a short little time period where you can cuddle up on the couch and watch TV together. Sure, there is that unique heart event that you can work toward, and most holidays and events are a little different with your spouse, but after you experience them, what else is there? Here I am criticizing a video game for not having a realistic representation of relationships, but marriage is supposed to be a partnership and a friendship. Sure, it's great when your spouse surprises you by doing little things on the farm to help you on occasion, but without having more interactions with them, besides having that little kissing animation, it feels more like you've worked to claim a trophy and not a spouse. Unfortunately, the same feeling carries over to when you start having children in the game.
Who keeps doing that? After you build a children's bedroom in your house, there's a chance every night your spouse will ask if you want to have a baby. If you say yes, you will go to bed like normal with no indication that anything has happened. And 14 days later, a baby just appears. No pregnancy or anything, you just wake up one morning and there's the baby. Over time, they will grow up to be toddlers at most, but there's practically no interaction you can have with them at all, save for one or two animations. They never leave the house and they don't even need to be taken care of. They are literally animated decor. Having a family, unfortunately, isn't engaging at all.
Now, I know game developers can't make their games 100% realistic. I feel my negatives are probably more in line with wishful thinking, and that's okay. The overall experience is very solid in terms of gameplay, so I never got tired of playing until I put well over 150 hours into the game. But if I wanted to keep going, there is an enormous modding community for Stardew Valley. I found everything from new outfits to completely new characters and villages. Everyone wants to squeeze every little bit out of the game that they can, because Stardew Valley at its core is just spectacular. Stardew Valley is mostly tame in terms of its themes, but there are a few things I would like to point out for parents researching the game that may cause them pause when considering whether or not to purchase it. This indie hit was originally a Steam exclusive for the PC, but now can be found in every major gaming system, including the current major 3, PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, as well as versions on iOS and Android smartphones and tablets. As of the making of this video, PC and console versions of the game go for $15 USD, and smartphone and tablet versions go for $8, which is a very good price considering the amount of content the game has and the free updates the game still receives on occasion. Stardew Valley is rated by the ESRB as E for 10 and up, citing its contents for fantasy violence, mild blood, mild language, simulated gambling, and the use of alcohol and tobacco. For examples of fantasy violence, the player could fight monsters mostly through spelunking in the 2 mines, but also in a few other specific places. The player will have access to an assortment of weapons and tools to use against these creatures, such as swords, bombs, and slingshots. You can't harm any villagers with your tools, with the exception of the slingshot. It's more of an annoyance for the NPCs in harming them in this way, as you only lose friendship points with that particular villager and can't actually kill anyone. I don't know where the mild blood comes in, because none of the enemies bleed when you hit them that I know of. Mild language has been cited, as words like hell and damn are used, though rather rarely. For simulated gambling, there is a secret casino you can find in the game, where you can exchange your character's money for what is essentially tokens to gamble with. In doing so, the player tries to hopefully make enough of these tokens back in exchange for the one-of-a-kind items you can find there. And lastly, the use of alcohol and tobacco is cited because there are a couple characters in the game who do smoke, though the player is not able to. The player is, however, able to purchase and make their own beer and wine in the game, both of which you're able to consume. There is a status ailment for drinking alcohol, but the player's character is never depicted as drunk. There is an NPC character who is depicted as drunk as a part of their character arc. Beyond the ESRB ratings, I feel there's a few other things that parents definitely need to know about the game. First, there are 12 available bachelors and bachelorettes, with 6 gentlemen and 6 ladies for you to romance, date, and eventually marry. You are able to romance all 12 of them all at once with a single character. This of course allows you to have a homosexual relationship as well as a heterosexual one, though you are only allowed to marry one person. Second, after you get married and for a very large amount of money, you can divorce your spouse at any time, and you don't have to have a reason to do so. Your spouse doesn't even put up a fight as they go about their day like nothing is wrong. Then the next day they're gone and return to their previous life. When you talk to them again, they will have dialogue expressing their sadness that things did not work out with you. Understandably, they will not accept any gifts, and you are unable to raise your friendship level with them. As I mentioned earlier in my review, modding, the way by which a person can modify their game to change the way it works and functions beyond what the developers have created, is very popular for Stardew Valley. I will say that there is some great and creative content that people have made for the game, but that statement also comes with the caveat that there is plenty of vulgar material as well. Websites that host mods, like Nexus for example, do have filters for violence, language, and sexual material, but I cannot stress this enough that no child should ever be left to browse that site unattended. I don't want to say don't look for mods because I've downloaded and used plenty myself and I've had a great time. The cheap mods I've downloaded so I could time travel and give myself items and change relationship levels have definitely helped me make this video a lot faster than if I were to have played the whole game over again. I guess I would say to look into these things at your own risk, but only if you're tech savvy enough to do so. And maybe parents should err on the side of caution and just not worry about downloading any, since the normal game itself has plenty enough material in it. Much like other games in this genre, Stardew Valley also features some spiritual themes within its gameplay. Now, it's not necessary for every game to have a theology built into its world, but I think a game like Stardew Valley would feel like it's lacking something without one. I don't know if it's the rural setting, or maybe it's the inspiration that Baroni took from the Harvest Moon series, but it's almost expected that there would be a spiritual element no matter what culture the game's setting is based on. Stardew's in-game theology revolves around a divine being called Yoba, whose symbol you will see around town is this lightning bolt-looking cross. I could see a sort of play on words with this, with an obvious reference to Judaism and Christianity, with God's divine name, Yahweh, and a cross-like symbol. Inside Pierre's general store, there's a chapel devoted to Yoba, which Pierre's wife Caroline mentions that it was part of the building when they had moved in. The chapel is adorned with golden pillars, simple stools for seats, and at the center of it all, a golden altar that looks like a sort of tabernacle. Some of the older residents of Pelican Town will visit the chapel around noon on Sunday as part of their weekly routine. There really isn't that much to learn about this divine being in the game. After building up a book collection in the library, there is some text you can find that expands a little bit on who Yoba is. And that's all you really get in terms of a theology. It may be minimal, but I really like the effort to try and create a mythos to give the characters a perspective on the world. Besides, from what I could tell is the game's monotheistic faith, there is, however, a very prominent display of what would be in the real world considered New Age as well as some dark arts practices. In terms of New Age, to name a few instances, Emily is into a lot of crystal healing things, and Abigail consults on a Ouija board and reads your palms on separate occasions. The instances with Abigail are through the cutscene heart events, so you are just passively taken along without actually being able to object, though you can skip the scene altogether. The place you have the most control over, thankfully, is via a television psychic. So one of Stardew Valley's mechanics is a luck-based system. This randomly changes every day and affects the quality and quantity of items that you can find or harvest. This is a normal video game concept, but the mode by which you can find out your luck for a particular day is what I'm bringing up. When you tune in, the psychic on TV will inform you of how the spirits are feeling that day, whether if they're happy, in turn giving you good luck, or if they're disappointed, giving you bad luck, or if they're completely neutral and leave you alone. Next, there's the town wizard. You're introduced to him within the first couple weeks after you catch sight of the mysterious apple creatures living within the abandoned community center. The wizard will contact you, and when you arrive at his tower, he will give you a potion to drink, giving you the ability to understand the tiny beings called Junimos. The wizard's tower is adorned with all the creepy and stereotypical things you would associate with a person who practices dark arts, with books strewn about and a bubbling cauldron and a large pentagram-like shape on the floor. Personally, I like the Junimos, even the concept that they could be spiritual beings trying to help out the player. But the wizard just always gave me an uncomfortable vibe, and I pretty much avoided him after I got the potion to speak with the Junimos. Lastly, and the most concerning in my opinion, is the conclusion of one of the side storylines, where the player gains access to the home of a witch. The player never really interacts with this character, as you find her abode empty upon your arrival. Inside, however, there are 3 statues, and they're aptly named the Dark Shrines of Terror, Memory, and Selfishness. The Dark Shrine of Terror is probably the least egregious of the 3, though it sounds the most heinous. If given an item called a strange bun, the shrine will toggle on and off monsters that will attack your farm at night. If you don't want to walk all the way to the mines to fight monsters, this is not a bad deal. If you get tired of being attacked at night, you could easily change this back by giving the shrine another strange bun. The next 2 are a little more questionable. If you've divorced your spouse and would like to be able to be on good terms with them again, the Dark Shrine of Memory, at the cost of 30,000 gold, will wipe your ex's memory. It will be as if you've never met them, essentially opening them up again for the opportunity to marry. And lastly, if you for some reason do not like having your children around, you can give one of the most valuable items in the game, a prismatic shard, to the Dark Shrine of Selfishness. This will immediately turn your children into a dove, permanently removing them from the game. Overall, I'm giving Stardew Valley a 9 out of 10 in terms of its entertainment value, but I'm also rating it with a negative neutral score for its spiritual value when it comes to the inclusion of several questionable themes. Stardew is a relaxing romp through the life of a farmer. The simple yet involved gameplay makes it easy to pick up and play, and the beautiful art style and spectacular music will keep you invested in this charming world with its unique and wonderful characters. It's amazing to see how much of this was developed by just one person in the beginning. Even though I give the game very high praise for its gameplay and the good lessons played out in some of the character arcs, unfortunately the more disturbing themes included in it have given me pause for a wholehearted recommendation. Sure, you technically don't have to experience any of these things, avoiding or skipping all of them, or you're just an adult and have the maturity to understand and process them. But without proper supervision, children can be exposed to these themes without knowledge of its real-world context. Story-wise, the game really is more for an adult crowd. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos are uploaded. Also, leave a comment below with suggestions and ideas for other topics. As always, take care, brothers and sisters, and God bless.